She told me not to come. That's the part nobody believes when I tell this story now, that I agreed. Welcome back. Pour your coffee, settle in, and get ready, because in these stories, karma always finds the address. Subscribe so you never miss what happens next. I'm Hart Robert, 46 years old, and on the worst Christmas Eve of my life, I sat alone in my garage with a space heater and a bottle of bourbon I never finished, while my wife spent the night at her parents' house with the man she used to be married to. I didn't know it yet, but before that night was over, three things would be true that weren't true 12 hours earlier. My wife would know exactly who I used to be. Her family would owe me their lives. And her ex-husband would never be allowed to look me in the eye again. But you need the beginning first. Because reasonable men don't just end up alone on Christmas Eve for no reason. Mine had a reason. Her name was Loveth, and she asked me for something I should have said no to. Loveth and I had been married 3 years, together almost 5. When I met her, she had a 4-year-old daughter named Annabelle, and a divorce that was barely dry on the paperwork. Her ex-husband, Prudent, was the kind of man who wore charm like cologne, a little too much of it, sprayed on anyone standing close enough to notice. I never hated Prudent. I want that on the record, because everything I'm about to tell you might make it sound like I did. I didn't hate him. I just didn't trust him. The way you don't trust a smoke alarm that's been chirping for months and everyone stopped hearing it. Loveth's parents, Desiree and Jude, had money, old money, the kind that builds a big house with a circular driveway and calls it the family place like it's nothing special. Jude made his fortune in commercial real estate. Desiree ran charity boards and never let you forget it. They liked Prudent. Liked him a lot, actually, which was strange, because Prudent didn't have much of anything left, not since his investment firm collapsed under what the papers called irregularities. Financial fraud, in plain language. He'd settled quietly. No admission. No jail. Just a long, expensive disappearing act that left people wondering where the money had actually gone. None of that mattered to Desiree and Jude. Prudent was Annabelle's father, and Annabelle was the sun their whole solar system orbited. So when Loveth called me 2 weeks before Christmas, I already had a bad feeling. Heart, she said, and I could hear her chewing the inside of her cheek, a habit she has right before she disappoints someone. So, my parents are doing the big Christmas this year. Whole house, tree, dinner, the works. Sounds nice, I said. Prudence going to be there. I let that sit for a second. Okay, my parents want Annabelle to have a complete Christmas, she said, like she was reading it off a card someone else had written for her. Both her parents. One table. They think it'll be good for her. And what do you think? I think it would be easier, she said, if you didn't come this year. There it is. Easier for who? I asked. For everyone, Hart. Prudent gets weird around you. My dad doesn't want tension at the table, and Annabelle's 7. She doesn't need to watch grown men be stiff and awkward at each other over turkey. So the fix is, I don't show up. It's one Christmas. You said that last year too, I said. About Thanksgiving. That was different. How? Because last year Prudent wasn't invited at all, and this year he is, and my parents already made the arrangement before they even told me. Hart, I didn't get a vote in this either. So tell them no. You don't tell my parents no, she said, and there was something tired in it. Something worn down by years of practice. You negotiate around them. You find the version of yes that costs the least. And I'm the cost this year. Hart, I'm not trying to make this harder, I said. I just want you to say it plainly. I'm the cost. That's what this is. She was quiet long enough that I heard her breathing change on the other end. Please, her voice cracked on the word, just slightly, and that's the part that got me, not the request. The way she asked it, like she already knew it was unfair and was asking anyway because she didn't see another way through it. Please, Hart, just this once. For Annabelle. I don't raise my voice. I never have. Some men get loud when they're hurt. I go quiet. Loveth used to say my silences were louder than most men's shouting. And she wasn't wrong. That night, she mistook my silence for agreement. Okay, I said. Okay? She sounded surprised. Maybe a little relieved I wasn't going to fight her on it. Go, I said. Give Annabelle her complete Christmas. You're not mad? I was furious. There's a difference between furious and stupid, though, and I've spent a long time learning it. I'll figure something out, I said. She exhaled, relief, plain and simple, and I remember thinking, even then, she has no idea what she just asked me to sit out of. Here's the thing about me Loveth didn't know. Not the whole thing, not even half. Before I became the guy who does freelance at security consulting from a home office. Before I was the guy who coaches Annabelle's soccer team on Saturday mornings and burns the pancakes every single time. I spent 11 years doing something else. I won't spell out every detail. Some of it I still can't, contractually, and some I just don't want to relive out loud. I'll say this much, I was part of a private contractor outfit that did close protection and extraction work in places most people can't find on a map. I've been shot at. I've been the one shooting. I've walked people out of buildings that were on fire, in both the literal sense and the other one. I left that life at 35. I was tired of counting how many good men I knew who never made it to 40. I wanted a boring life. Pancakes, soccer practice, a woman who fell asleep with her feet in my lap watching bad television. I got all of that with Loveth, and I buried the rest of it so deep even I sometimes forgot it was down there. Until Christmas Eve. I want to tell you about the first time I met Prudent, because it explains a lot about why I agreed to stay home that Christmas without much of a fight. It was maybe 4 months into dating Loveth. She'd invited me to a birthday dinner for Annabelle at her parents' place. Annabelle's fifth. Cake with too much frosting. A bounce house someone had rented and then regretted because of the noise. Prudent showed up an hour late, no gift, full of apologies that somehow made him the center of attention anyway. Sorry, he said, sweeping in, kissing Desiree on the cheek, ruffling Annabelle's hair. Work emergency. You know how it is. Jude clapped him on the back like nothing had happened. Glad you made it, son. Not son-in-law. Not ex-son-in-law. Son, I remember clocking that word and filing it away. Prudent found me by the drink table later that night, looked me up and down with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and said, So you're the new guy. Heart, I said, and put my hand out. He shook it. Too hard, the way men do when they're measuring you. It's security, right? Loveth mentioned it. Must be nice. Stable. Low stress. Something like that. I used to think about a job like that, he said. Something boring. Something where nobody's ever mad at you. He laughed like it was a joke, and I understood, even then, that it wasn't. Later in the car, Loveth asked me what I thought of him. He's charming, I said. That's not an answer. He called your dad son. Your dad called him son, I said. That's not normal, is it? For an ex-husband? She was quiet for a second. My parents adore him, she said. They always have. Even after everything with the divorce. Even after she stopped herself. Even after what? Nothing. It's not important. It was important. I just didn't know it yet. They think if they're warm enough to him, he'll stay close for Annabelle's sake, she said finally. That's all it is. It's not about him being a good person. It's about keeping the peace. And what happens to the people standing where the peace gets kept? I asked. She didn't have an answer for that one either. Not that night. It would take years, and a Christmas Eve neither of us saw coming, for her to find one. I spent that night in the garage, which had become half man cave, half workshop over the years, a recliner, a workbench, a space heater, an old police scanner I kept more out of habit than need. I told myself I was fine. I told myself a lot of things. Around 9, my phone buzzed. A text from Annabelle, sent off Loveth's phone since she didn't have her own yet. Merry Christmas, Heart. I miss you, not Dad. Not Prudent. Just Heart, which is what she'd always called me. And it nearly put me on the floor. Miss you more, kiddo, I wrote back. Save me some pie. I will. Grandma made 3 kinds. 3? Show off. Come tomorrow? I stared at that one a long time before I answered. We'll see, kiddo. Go have fun tonight. Oak. Love you too. I set the phone down and sat there a while, turning my glass in slow circles. And my mind wandered back, the way it does when you're alone in a cold garage on a night you're supposed to be somewhere warm, to the night I met Loveth. It was a hardware store, of all places, both of us reaching for the same box of drywall anchors on a Saturday afternoon, 2 years after her divorce was final. She'd laughed at herself for not knowing what size she needed. I'd shown her, not in a smooth way, just a practical one, and somewhere between drywall anchors and her insisting on buying me coffee to say thanks, we'd talked for 2 hours in a parking lot. "You're very calm," she'd said that day, studying me over a paper coffee cup. "Is that a personality thing, or are you secretly panicking on the inside like the rest of us?" "Bit of both," I'd told her, which was truer than she knew. "My ex-husband was never calm," she said. "Everything was a performance with him. Even being upset was a performance. I didn't realize how tired that made me until it stopped. And now? Now I like quiet," she said. "I didn't used to. I thought quiet meant boring. Now I think quiet just means honest." I remember thinking, sitting in that parking lot, that I had found someone who might actually let me be as quiet as I needed to be, for as long as I needed to be it, without asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. 5 years later, on Christmas Eve, that same quiet was the reason I let her tell me to stay home, without putting up a real fight. I'd spent so long being the guy who didn't make noise that I'd forgotten how to make it even when it mattered. I didn't know it yet, but that would change by morning. Around 11, out of habit more than anything, I turned on the scanner. At 11:40, it crackled to life. A dispatch call, garbled, referencing a residential alarm trip out near the Whitlock Road. The private drive Desiree and Jude's place sat off of, no house name, just the turn everybody in the county already knew by the family name on the mailbox. My stomach dropped. I told myself it was nothing. Big properties like that trip alarms constantly. Deer, wind, a raccoon on the porch sensor. I didn't know it yet, but that alarm was the first domino. For 20 minutes I sat there, telling myself not to call. Telling myself that showing up uninvited to check on an alarm would look exactly like the jealous, insecure man Loveth's family already half suspected I was. At 12:19, my phone rang. It was Loveth. Hart. Her voice wasn't just trembling. It was shredded. "Hart. Please, oh my God, please pick up. I'm here. I'm here. Talk to me. There are men in the house." The words came in pieces, like she was running while she said them. Because she was. Men with masks. They came in through the back. They've got my dad. They made everyone get down on the floor. Something in me went cold and still at the same time. Everything slows down when that happens. The world gets very quiet and very sharp. "Where's Annabelle?" I said. Not a question. A demand. "She's with me. She's okay. She's okay, but Hart." They keep saying Prudent's name. They keep asking where the money is. They think there's cash hidden here. Of course they did. Of course it came back to Prudent. Even on Christmas. Even with a 7-year-old in the house. "Where are you right now?" I said. My voice had already changed. I heard it change. The pantry. Off the kitchen. "Me and Annabelle, we slipped in when they weren't looking. Hart, they're going to find us. Why did you do this to me? Why weren't you here?" That last part didn't make sense to me until later. She wasn't blaming me for anything logical. She was in shock, grabbing for the one voice she could reach, and I happened to be the one on the other end of the phone. People say things in terror they don't mean. "Listen to me," I said. "Loveth, listen to my voice. You're going to stay exactly where you are. You do not open that door for anyone but me. Understand? Hart, what are you? I'm coming. Call the police." "Don't come here, you'll get hurt. Police are already rolling," I said, which was a guess, but an educated one. Alarms like that auto-notify the county. On rural roads, midnight, Christmas, they're 15, 20 minutes out. I can be there in 11. How do you even know that, Hart? How could you possibly? I need you to trust me right now more than you've trusted anyone in your life. Can you do that?" Silence. A pause I will remember until the day I die. "Yes," she whispered. "Good. Stay low. Cover Annabelle's ears if it gets loud in there. I'm coming." I hung up. And I drove. I won't bore you with what's kept in the false floor of my Jeep's cargo area. Built the same month Loveth and I moved in together, and never once mentioned to her. I'll just say 11 years of training doesn't evaporate because you traded it for a soccer whistle and a mortgage. I called a number I hadn't dialed in 6 years while I drove. It rang twice. Cole. Gravelli. Half asleep. Then instantly not. "Hart? What's wrong?" Cole had been my spotter for 4 of those 11 years. Sheriff's deputy now, 2 counties over. One of maybe 3 people alive who still knew who I used to be. Active home invasion, I said. Hostages, at least 2 armed. My wife and stepdaughter are inside. It's her parents' place, off the Whitlock Road, the big property with the long gravel drive. Jesus, Hart, I need eyes and backup rolling. Now moving, I heard him already up, keys jingling. Don't you dare go full cowboy on me, you hear? Talk to me when you're close. No promises, Cole, Hart, I mean it. You've got a wife and a kid to walk out of that house alive. That's the mission tonight. Not payback, not proving anything. Getting them out. I know the mission. Say it back to me. Get them out, I said. That's it. Good man. I'm rolling. ETA 14 minutes. Maybe less if I run every light between here and there. You call me the second you're inside so I know you're not a body on that lawn when we arrive. Copy, and Hart, his voice dropped, just for a second. Out of the old rhythm we used to have, back when a call like this one meant something different, somewhere much farther from home. Glad you're the one who picked up that scanner tonight, and not some other night. Not everybody would have caught it. Old habits. Old habits saved lives before. Looks like they're about to again. I hung up and drove faster. I made a 20-minute drive in 11. Some things a man keeps to himself, even telling his own story. The property sat back off the road behind a stand of bare winter trees, windows glowing warm and gold from the outside, which made what was happening inside feel obscene by comparison. Lights strung along the eaves, a wreath the size of a truck tire on the front door, and somewhere behind all that warmth, my family on the floor of a pantry, hiding from men with guns. I didn't take the driveway. I parked well up the road, killed the lights, went in on foot through the tree line the way I'd been trained to 100 lifetimes ago. A service entrance near the kitchen sat ajar, the door rich families forget exists because they never use it themselves. That told me the entry point. Through the kitchen window I could see shapes. 2 men in dark clothing and ski masks. One had Jude's zip tied to a dining chair dragged in from the table, his face gray with fear and fury in equal measure. Desiree was on the floor near him, hands over her head, sobbing quietly. And there, near the archway to the living room, Austin, Loveth's older brother. 38, built like he still played the college ball he never quite let go of, on his knees with his hands laced behind his head, a masked man's boot near his back, keeping him down. I told you, Austin was saying, voice shaking but not backing down. I told you, we don't know anything about money. None of us do. Whatever Prudent did is his business. Shut up, the man barked, and shoved the boot harder into his shoulder blades. Austin grunted but didn't stop talking. You want to point a gun at somebody, point it at him. He's the one who... I said shut up. I heard a second voice, from further inside, closer to the pantry. Where's the money, old man? Where's your son-in-law hiding it? I don't know what you're talking about, Jude said, and even through the glass I could hear how much it cost him to keep his voice steady. I don't know anything about any money. If Prudent owes you people something, take it up with Prudent. Don't play stupid with me. He told our guys it was here, somewhere in this house. Then your guys were lied to, Jude said, by a man who lies for a living. Wrong answer, old man. Please, Desiree said, from the floor, her voice barely holding together. Please, there's a little girl in this house. Please, just take whatever you want and go. We'll take whatever we want when he tells us where it is. Austin, still pinned by the boot in his back, twisted his head enough to speak. I told you already. None of us know anything. You want the truth? Prudent doesn't even live here. He hasn't lived here in years. Whatever he told you, whatever deal he made with your people, that's on him, not on this family. I told you to shut your mouth. Or what? Austin said, and even scared out of his mind. There was something stubborn in it, something that reminded me why Loveth always said her brother was the one who never knew when to quit. You're already pointing a gun at an unarmed man on Christmas Eve. What's left to threaten me with? The man's boot came down harder between his shoulder blades, and Austin grunted and went quiet. And that's when I heard the crack of the pistol against Jude's cheekbone from the other room. Something in my chest went very cold and very clear. I didn't know it yet, But that was the exact second I stopped being a man deciding whether to get involved, and became a man executing a plan. I'm not going to walk you through every second of what happened next like it's an action movie, because it didn't feel like one. It felt like math. Angles, timing, breath. 11 years of training doesn't come roaring back all at once in some triumphant montage. It comes back in fragments, your body doing what it was built to do while your mind stands off to the side, terrified, watching. I went in through the service door. The first man, the one standing over Austin, never heard me. I won't describe what happened beyond saying he went down quiet and fast, and he did not get back up in time to matter. Austin's head snapped up, eyes wide. What the? Stay down, I whispered. Stay quiet. Heart? Heart? How did you, later, the second man, the one who'd hit Jude, spun at the noise, gun rising fast. For 1/2 of 1 second I looked down the barrel of a pistol and thought, with a strange, detached calm, this is either the last thing I do or the thing I do best. It was the latter. I won't pretend it was clean. It was ugly and it was fast, and when it was over, the second man was on the kitchen floor, disarmed, not going anywhere. Jude stared at me, blood on his lip, eyes wide as dinner plates. Heart? He said, like he genuinely could not reconcile what he was seeing with the quiet son-in-law he'd spent 3 years politely tolerating. Heart, was that... Did you just... Are you hurt bad? I asked, cutting the zip tie off his wrists with the folding knife I always carry and he never knew about. No. Heart, what in God's name? Where's the pantry? Austin, still on his knees, pointed with a shaking hand. There, off the kitchen. They were headed that way next. They knew someone else was in the house. Then I'm not done, I said, and moved. I knocked twice, low, on the pantry door, a signal I'd told Loveth on the phone to listen for. It's me. It's Heart. The door cracked open, and there she was, my wife, mascara down both cheeks. Annabelle held against her chest like she could physically shield a 7-year-old from the whole world if she just held on tight enough. Heart. Loveth's voice broke completely. Heart, oh my God, you're here? How are you here? Are either of you hurt? No, we're okay, but the men, they're still. 2 are down, I said. There's a third, I don't know where yet. I need you two to stay right here 2 more minutes. Can you do that? Annabelle lifted her face out of her mother's shoulder, tear-streaked, and looked at me with an expression I will carry to my grave. Not fear, something closer to awe. Heart, she said, small and shaking. Did you save Grandpa? I'm working on it, kiddo, I said. You did such a good job hiding. So brave. Where's my dad? She asked. Where's Daddy? I didn't have an answer for that. Not yet. Stay here, I said. Both of you. Please. Loveth grabbed my wrist before I could pull away. Heart, the man who's still out there, he's got a gun. Please be careful. I will, I said. I promise. I didn't fully mean it. I meant I'd try. But I wasn't going to tell her that. Here's the part of the story you need to sit with, because it's the part that changed everything. While I was clearing a kitchen full of armed men, while Jude bled from the mouth in a dining chair, while Austin took a boot to the back, protecting people who weren't even his to protect, while my wife and stepdaughter hid 15 feet from danger in a locked pantry, Prudent was in the wine cellar. Alone, door locked from the inside. Later, Austin would tell me exactly how it happened. He heard the first shout, Austin said, sitting on the porch steps a few hours after, wrapped in a blanket, still shaking off the adrenaline. Same second I did. And I swear to you, Heart, I looked around for him, thinking, okay, we need to get Annabelle somewhere safe, and he was already gone. Just gone. I didn't even see him move. He ran, I said. He ran, Austin confirmed. Straight past the kitchen, past Loveth, past his own kid, and I heard the cellar door slam and lock behind him. I heard it, Hart. I heard the deadbolt. He didn't say anything? Didn't try to get Annabelle with him? Austin shook his head slowly, like even he still couldn't quite believe it. Not one word. Not one look back. The third man, the one still loose in the house when I reached the pantry, turned out to be circling the wine cellar door when Cole's cruisers finally hit the driveway, red and blue lighting up the front lawn, like some grotesque second Christmas. He gave up without a fight the second he saw 4 deputies coming across the lawn with rifles raised. Cole found Prudent 20 minutes later, still locked in that cellar, sweating through his dress shirt, calling weakly through the door to ask if it was safe yet. Desiree, wrapped in a blanket on the couch, hot tea shaking in her hands, watched that cellar door open. Watched Prudent step out, pale, unbloodied, unbothered by anything except his own fear. And I watched something in her face break, some illusion about her son-in-law finally, permanently shattering. "You left them," she said. "Just that. Flat, final, your own daughter was in this house, Prudent, and you left them." "Desiree," I panicked. I didn't know what was. "You locked a door," she said. "Behind yourself. And left everyone else on the other side of it." He opened his mouth again. Nothing came out. "There isn't an explanation for that. There never is." Loveth found him on the front lawn a while later, past the police tape, past the ambulance lights, standing apart from everyone like he already understood he wasn't welcome close to the house anymore. I stayed back by the porch, close enough to hear, far enough that this one was hers to have. "You locked a door on our daughter," she said. No preamble. "Loveth," I panicked. "I swear to you, you didn't think about Annabelle at all," she said. "That's the part I need you to say out loud. Not that you panicked. That in the moment it mattered most, she wasn't even in your head. That's not fair." "Fair," she repeated, like the word tasted wrong in her mouth. "You want to talk about fair? Men broke into my parents' house on Christmas Eve, looking for money because of something you did, Prudent, and when they got here, you ran and hid and left the rest of us to whatever was going to happen. I didn't know they'd come here. I swear to you. I didn't think. You keep saying that. You didn't think. You didn't know." Her voice was shaking now, but not the way it had shaken on the phone with me. This was something colder. "Hart didn't have an invitation tonight. You had a standing one, every year, no questions asked, because my parents decided a father with a good excuse is worth more than a husband with none. And when it counted, he's the one who walked into gunfire for our daughter. You're the one who locked her out of a room to save yourself." Prudent's jaw worked, but nothing came out. "I'm done making room for you," Loveth said. "I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm done." She walked back to the porch without waiting for an answer, because there wasn't one worth waiting for. It came out over the following days, in pieces. Through Cole, and through the detectives who took the case over from the county. The 2 men who'd made it into the house, the 3rd caught circling the cellar, weren't random. They were hired, or owed a debt, by people connected to Prudent's collapsed investment firm. There'd been a rumor for years, in certain ugly circles, that Prudent hadn't just lost everyone's money when his firm fell apart. That he'd skimmed a chunk of it beforehand and hidden it somewhere nobody would think to look. His ex-wife's parents' house, apparently, was exactly that somewhere. "I don't understand," Loveth said, the 2 of us sitting up late at our own kitchen table a week later, going over what Cole had told us. "Why would he hide anything at my parents' house? He hasn't even lived there in years." "Because nobody would look for it there," I said. "That's the whole point. Hide it somewhere with your name nowhere on the deed." So he used my parents. He used Annabelle's own grandparents' house as a hiding spot for stolen money, and let a bunch of armed men walk in on Christmas Eve looking for it. That's what it looks like. Cole had gotten the fuller version from a friend still working the fraud unit, and he'd laid it out for me over the phone 2 nights before, plain and unhurried, the way he'd always briefed me before a job. The account's under a name that traces back to a cousin of his, dead 6 years. Nobody thought to check, Cole had said. He's been quietly moving money through it since before the firm even collapsed publicly. Small amounts, spread out. Nothing that would trip an audit on its own. But the men who broke in, they weren't investigators. They were owed money by the same people Prudent burned when the firm went under, and somewhere along the way, somebody convinced them the cash was sitting in a house with your father-in-law's name on the deed. Why would Prudent let that rumor spread? Best guess? Because it kept dangerous people patient, Cole had said. As long as they believed the money was somewhere findable, they held off doing anything drastic. He was buying himself time. He just didn't count on them running out of patience on Christmas Eve. in a house with his own kid in it. I relayed all of that to Loveth now, sitting across the table from her, watching her absorb it piece by piece. He let them think it, she said slowly, so they wouldn't come after him. And instead they came after my parents. My daughter. That's about the size of it. She pressed her palms against her eyes. I asked you not to come, she said, muffled. I told you to stay home so it would be easier. You didn't know, I said. I didn't ask either, she said. I never once asked what kind of man he actually was. I just assumed because he was Annabelle's father, that meant something automatically, that it made him safe. It doesn't work that way. I know that now. A detective named Faulkner, a heavy-set man with a tired, patient way of talking, sat across from us at that same kitchen table 2 days later, going through the timeline one more time for the file. Walk me through it again, he said. From when your wife called you. 12:19, I said. She said there were men in the house. Masks. Her father was restrained. And you were where? My garage. About 11 miles out. You made it in under 15 minutes. I know the back roads, I said, which was true. And also not the whole answer, and Faulkner's eyes told me he knew that too, and had decided not to push it. Cole had already smoothed some of that over on my behalf, one badge to another, favors nobody would ever write down. Your father-in-law says you disarmed 2 men in under a minute, Faulkner said. Says it like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. No, Faulkner agreed. I don't imagine it was. He tapped his pen against the file. You want to tell me where a security consultant learns to do that? I did some contract work overseas, a long time back, I said, before I met my wife. Contract work, Faulkner repeated, like he was trying the phrase on for size. That's right. He looked at me for a long moment, the kind of look I recognized from men who spend their careers reading other men. And then he closed the file. Whatever you used to do, he said, you probably saved 4 lives Christmas Eve. I'm not going to go digging into the rest of it. Not my case. He stood, shook my hand. Merry Christmas, Mr. Robert. Late as it is. After he left, Loveth sat very still at the table for a long moment. He knew you weren't telling him everything, she said. Yeah, are you going to tell me everything? Someday, I said. Not all of it's mine to tell. Some of it belongs to men who aren't around to say whether they're okay with it being told. She reached across the table and took my hand, and didn't ask again that night. By 4 in the morning, back at her parents' house, the scene was clear. The 2 men inside were in custody, and the third had been picked up at the tree line, trying to cut through the woods on foot. A paramedic knelt in front of Jude, on the porch steps, shining a penlight in his eyes, asking him to follow her finger. I'm fine, Jude said, waving her off. It's a split lip, not a stroke. Sir, I need to check for concussion, given the... I said I'm fine. Then, quieter, looking past her to where I stood a few feet off Hart. Come here a second. I came over. The paramedic sighed and stepped back, giving up the argument for the moment. I owe you my life, Jude said. Just like that. Flat, plain, the way men like him say things that actually matter, because the ceremony of it embarrasses them. I don't know what you used to do before you married my daughter. I'm not sure I want the details, but I know what you did tonight, and I'm not going to pretend I don't. You don't owe me anything, Jude. I do, he said, and I intend to remember it, whether you want me to or not. He looked past me, toward the ambulance where Desiree sat wrapped in a blanket, and something in his face softened. I built this family on the idea that keeping everyone comfortable mattered more than knowing who they really were. Tonight cost me that idea. I'm not sorry to lose it. The paramedic cleared her throat. Sir, the concussion check fine, Jude said, relenting at last. Fine, shine your light. I stepped back and let her work, and Jude let her, muttering the whole time about how he'd survived 3 heart procedures, and could certainly survive a flashlight. The ambulance eventually cleared him to refuse further treatment, which he did, loudly the way rich old men do. I found Loveth sitting on the front steps, wrapped in someone's coat, staring at nothing. Annabelle was asleep inside on a couch, Desiree keeping watch over her. Austin sat a few feet off, still catching his breath, still turning his hands over like he half expected to find them shaking. I sat down next to my wife in the cold. For a long time nobody said anything. Who are you? Loveth finally asked. Not accusing. Just quiet. Genuinely asking. I'm the same man you married. You took down 2 armed men in my parents' kitchen like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing, I said. It just wasn't new. She turned to look at me fully, and I watched 11 years of careful concealment finally reach the surface of her face. Not suspicion, not fear, but something closer to grief, for all the years she'd spent thinking she knew the whole shape of me. You told me you did it security, she said. I do. Now? And before? I told her. Not everything. Some things I still can't say out loud, even to her. But enough. 11 years. The work. Why I left it. The bag under the Jeep's floor, that had been sitting there the entire length of our marriage, 3 feet from where she parked her car every single day, and she'd never once known. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. Tears again, but a different kind than before. Because I wanted a life where I never had to be that man again, I said. I wanted pancakes and soccer practice. I wanted to be boring, loveth, safe, for you and for Annabelle. And then you told me not to come tonight, and I sat in that garage telling myself it didn't matter. And then my phone rang. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I asked you to stay away. I'm sorry for what I said on the phone. Why did you do this to me? I didn't mean it. I wasn't thinking. I know what you meant, I said. You were terrified. I'm not angry about that. Then what are you angry about? I looked through the front window, to where Prudence sat wrapped in a blanket Desiree had handed him more out of habit than warmth, staring at the floor like a man waiting on a verdict. Before I could answer her, Cole waved me over from beside his cruiser, and Loveth nodded, understanding I'd only be a minute. He had 2 coffees in hand from a thermos he kept in his trunk out of habit, and he handed me one without a word. We stood there in silence a moment before he spoke. You held back, he said. What? In there. I know what you're capable of, Hart. I've seen it. What you did tonight, that was restrained. Controlled, old you would have made a bigger mess. Old me didn't have a 7-year-old 2 rooms away, I said. Fair point. He sipped his coffee, looked out at the flashing lights still painting the front lawn red and blue. You know I'm going to have to write some of this up in a way that doesn't sound like a guy just walked in and neutralized 2 armed men with his bare hands in under 90 seconds. I trust you'll find the words. I always do. He clapped me on the shoulder, the same easy gesture Jude had used on Prudent 100 times over the years, except this one meant something. For what it's worth, you did good tonight. Actually good, not just skilled. Good feels strange to hear that word attached to tonight. Get used to it, Cole said. I think you're about to hear it a lot. He wasn't wrong. I walked back to the steps, sat down beside Loveth again, and finally answered the question she'd asked before Cole pulled me away. I'm angry, I said slowly, that your parents thought a man who lies for a living made for a more complete Christmas than the man who actually shows up. Austin, close enough to hear, let out a short, humorless laugh. You want to hear something? He said. I've spent 3 years low-key annoyed at you for being so quiet at every family thing. Thought you were standoffish. Thought maybe you didn't think we were good enough for you. He shook his head. Turns out, you were just the only sane person in the building. I don't think that's true, I said. It's true tonight, Austin said. I want to tell you this story ends with some tidy redemption arc for Prudent, that he apologized, that he changed, that family dinners got easier after that. It doesn't, and they didn't, because that's not how I chose to let it end. 2 weeks later, the investigation confirmed what everyone already knew in their gut. Prudent had funneled a portion of his old firm's assets into an account under a shell name, years before the collapse ever went public. He hadn't actually hidden cash at the house. That rumor turned out to be wrong in the literal sense, but the men who broke in believed it. And they believed it because Prudent had spent years quietly feeding that exact story to keep dangerous people patient while he moved the real money somewhere else entirely. His lies didn't just catch up to him eventually, on his own schedule, in some office somewhere. They walked into his ex-wife's parents' kitchen and put a gun to an old man's face on Christmas Eve, in front of his own daughter. Federal investigators picked him up in the second week of the new year. I made sure, through a few quiet calls to people who still owed me favors, that every relevant detail landed on the right desks at the right time. I'm not going to pretend that was generosity. It wasn't. It was the last piece of a debt I intended to collect in full. You didn't have to do that, Loveth said, when I finally told her what I'd done. Yes, I did, I said. He's still Annabelle's father. He'll still be her father in a federal courtroom, I said. Being her father was never a shield, Loveth. He used it like one, for years. I'm done letting him. She didn't argue with me. I think, by then, some part of her didn't want to. Annabelle woke up on the couch that morning, to a house full of deputies' radios and adult voices talking low, and the first thing she did was find me and refuse to let go of my hand for almost an hour. Somewhere around 9, once things had quieted enough, she pulled me over to the kitchen table, climbed into the chair beside mine, and looked at me with the particular seriousness only a 7-year-old can manage. Hart, she said, are the bad men going to come back? No, kiddo, they're not. How do you know? Because they're with the police now, and they're going to stay with the police for a long, long time, I said. And because I'm not going to let anything like that happen to you again. Not ever. Promise? Promise. She thought about that for a second, turning her fork over in her hands, not eating the eggs Desiree had made her. Were you scared? She asked. I could have lied to her. Plenty of grown-ups would have. But I decided somewhere on that drive over that I was done deciding, on my own, what Annabelle was and wasn't strong enough to hear. A little, I said, but being scared and doing what you need to do anyway, that's not two different things fighting each other. Sometimes they happen at the same time, like when I was scared in the pantry but I stayed quiet anyway. Exactly like that, I said. You did that perfectly, by the way. I need you to know that. You kept your mom safe, just by being brave enough to stay quiet and still. She smiled at that. Small and shaky, but real. Grandma says you're a hero. I don't know about that. I think you're a hero, Annabelle said, with the flat certainty of a kid who hasn't yet learned to hedge her opinions. Heroes protect people. You protected us. I didn't have an answer for that one that didn't threaten to break something open in my chest. So I just squeezed her hand and let her eat her eggs, and didn't say anything else for a while, and that was all right too. Desiree came to see Loveth alone. A few days after the arrests made the local news, sitting at our kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a mug she never drank from. I need to say something, Desiree said, and I need you to let me finish before you respond. Okay, I spent years telling myself that keeping Prudent close was a gift to Annabelle, Desiree said, that a girl needs both her parents at the table, no matter what. I never once asked whether the man sitting at that table deserved to be there. I just assumed a father's chair was owed to him by default, and I built the whole holiday around protecting his seat in it. She looked down at her hands, and in protecting that seat, I made your husband feel like an intruder in his own family for 3 years. I did that. Not Prudent. Me, Mom, let me finish. Desiree's voice wavered but held. I watched that man run to a wine cellar and lock a door between himself and my granddaughter. And I watched Hart run toward the danger to get to her, and it took a night like that for me to finally see what should have been obvious the whole time. I'm sorry, Loveth, not just to you. To him. I don't know how you forgive a mistake like that. I don't think you need forgiveness, Loveth said quietly. I think you need to just never do it again. I don't intend to, Desiree said. Not to you, not to Hart, not ever again. It wasn't a grand reconciliation. There were no tears shared between them that day, no embrace that fixed 3 years of quiet exclusion in a single afternoon. But it was honest, and it was the first honest thing Desiree had said to her daughter about Prudent in longer than either of them could remember, and sometimes that has to be enough to start with. Jude and Desiree changed too, quietly, without ever quite saying it out loud. They stopped defending Prudent's presence at family events for Annabelle's sake. They started instead defending mine. At the next family dinner, small, quiet, nothing like the chaos of that Christmas, Jude pulled me aside near the drink cart, cleared his throat twice, and said the closest thing to an apology a man like him is built to give. I misjudged you, he said. 3 years, I thought the quiet ones had nothing going on behind the silence. I was wrong. You're the only one who showed up when it mattered, and you didn't even have an invitation. I don't need an apology, Jude. I'm giving you one anyway. Then I need you to remember it, I said. Not just tonight. Every Christmas after this one. He nodded, and he never spoke Prudent's name in my presence again, for as long as I knew him. Austin, for his part, started showing up at our place on random weekends, with a case of beer and absolutely no agenda. Which is, I've come to learn, the highest compliment one man can pay another. "You could have taught me some of that," he said once, half joking, nodding at nothing in particular. At the memory of that night, I think more than anything physical. The kitchen thing. "No," I said. "You don't want what taught me that." He thought about it, and didn't push. As for Prudent, I saw him one more time, at the arraignment, sitting in a cheap suit that didn't fit him the way his old ones used to, looking smaller than I remembered. Cole had come with me, off duty, standing near the back of the courtroom with his arms crossed, the way he used to stand watch outside doors a long time ago in a different life. "You don't have to be here for this," he told me in the parking lot beforehand. "I know. You want to explain to me why you are, then?" "Because for 3 years I sat quiet at that man's table, while he charmed a room he had no business being trusted in," I said. "I want to watch the room stop believing him." Once, in person. Cole hadn't argued with that. Inside, the prosecutor read through the charges in a flat, practiced voice. Wire fraud, embezzlement, obstruction, each one landing in the courtroom like a small, dull weight. Prudent's lawyer murmured something to him. Prudent nodded without looking up. Desiree sat 2 rows ahead of me, spine straight, hands folded in her lap, watching the man she'd once called son answer to a judge for the thing that had put a gun to her husband's face. She didn't cry. She didn't look away, either. Prudent looked up when I walked in, before the hearing started, before anything had been read aloud yet. Opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. An apology, maybe, an explanation. 12 feet of courtroom aisle and a bailiff's raised hand kept whatever it was from ever reaching me. I didn't give him the chance, and I didn't need to. There wasn't a version of that sentence I hadn't already decided not to believe. I looked at him the way you look at a smoke alarm that's finally, permanently gone silent, not with anger anymore, not even satisfaction, just the flat, quiet relief of a problem that had stopped being mine to manage. The judge set bail conditions that amounted to house arrest and a monitor on his ankle until trial. Prudent's lawyer requested visitation language be added for Annabelle. The judge looked at the file a long moment, then at Prudent, then denied it pending a further hearing, not a permanent ruling, but a clear enough signal of which way the wind in that room was blowing. Outside afterward, on the courthouse steps, Cole fell into step beside me. "Well," he said, "that's about as close to watching a man's whole reputation die in real time as I've ever seen. Feels less satisfying than I thought it would." "Give it time," Cole said. "Some things you don't feel the weight of until you're standing further away from them." He was right, as it turned out, though it took the better part of a year for me to notice it lifting. Then I turned around, walked out of that courthouse, and drove home to my wife and my stepdaughter, who were waiting for me at a table that, for the first time in years, had exactly the right number of chairs. Annabelle still calls me Heart. Some nights, quietly, when she thinks I'm not close enough to hear, she calls me something else. I never correct her, and I never let on that I heard. The next Christmas, Desiree called me herself, not Loveth. First time in 3 years she'd ever dialed my number directly. "Heart," she said, a little formal, a little nervous, which was new for her. "We're doing dinner again this year. Whole family. I wanted to ask you myself. In case you thought you needed an invitation." "I appreciate that, Desiree. You don't need one," she said. "Not ever again. I should have made that clear a long time before I did. You're making it clear now. Better late," she said, "than never at all, I suppose." The night before, Loveth and I sat up late at our own kitchen table again, the way we had a year earlier, except this time there was no case file open between us, no detective's business card, just 2 mugs of tea going cold. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" she asked. "Are you?" "I think so." She turned her mug slowly in her hands. "It's strange. Last year I was terrified of that house. This year I keep thinking about how much I want to walk back into it with you next to me, on purpose this time. Not as a compromise. Not as the thing that makes it easier for everyone else. You don't have to explain it to me. I want to, though," she said. "I spent years thinking love meant smoothing things over so nobody got uncomfortable. My parents taught me that without ever saying it out loud. Keep the peace. Make room. Don't ask hard questions if the soft answer keeps the table quiet. She looked up at me. You almost died keeping that table quiet, Hart. You were 11 miles away in a garage, because I asked you to make room for a man who ran and hid the first second things got dangerous. You didn't know that's what he'd do. I didn't ask, either, she said. That's the part I can't let go of. Not that I got it wrong. That I never even wondered if I might have. You know now. I know now, she agreed, and I'm never doing it again. Not with him. Not with anyone. If someone in my life needs smoothing over to be tolerated at a dinner table, that tells me everything I need to know about whether they belong at it. I reached across and took her hand, and we sat there a while longer, saying nothing else, because there wasn't anything else that needed saying. So the next evening, we went, all of us, me, Loveth, Annabel in a red dress she picked out herself, insisting on it for a week straight. Jude met us at the door and shook my hand like he meant it. No forced clap on the back, no sun directed at anyone but me this time. Glad you're here, he said. Simple, true, Austin showed up with 2 cases of beer instead of 1, which I took as his own quiet form of apology for 3 years of misreading me. You could still teach me the kitchen thing, he said, grinning, handing me a bottle. Hypothetically, in case I'm ever in a pinch. Hypothetically, I said, no. Dinner was loud and easy in a way it had never once been in the years before. Nobody said Prudence' name. Nobody needed to. His absence didn't sit at the table like a hole anymore. It just sat there like weather that had finally passed. Later that night, after pie 3 kinds, Annabel made sure to remind me, exactly like she'd promised the year before. She found me on the back porch, where I'd stepped out for a few minutes of quiet. Hart, she said, climbing up onto the step beside me. Are you going to come every year now? Every year, I said. As many as you'll have me. Forever? Forever's a long time, kiddo. That's okay, she said. You're good at long things. I laughed and pulled my coat around her shoulders against the cold, and for a while neither of us said anything else. Inside, through the window, I could see Loveth laughing at something her mother had said, easy and unguarded in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. Jude was topping off Austin's glass. The tree lights blinked slow and steady against the dark glass. Hart? Annabel said again, quieter this time. Yeah? I'm glad you came that night. The scary one. Me too, kiddo. You're not scary, she said. Like she was correcting some old idea she'd finally worked out the truth of. Everybody thought you were quiet and boring. But you were just waiting. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds. Something like that, I said. She leaned her head against my arm, and we sat there a while longer, the cold biting at both of us and neither of us minding, until Loveth came looking to bring us back in, out of the dark. That's the whole story. My wife told me not to come to Christmas, and when it mattered most, I was the only one who did, and I never had to ask permission to come to one again.